Good afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And welcome to Nerd Tube. That's enough of that. We're here to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, episode 2 of season 4, Magnum TA Shattered. I'm here with two very knowledgeable wrestling fans. First of all, the return of DOSA 101. How you doing?
I'm 35 today, damn it, and I feel old as ever. But what a maneuver! Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I am back to rock your socks off. That's what she said. But let's get into it, man. Magnum TA, a guy that was before my time, but it was a very interesting episode. Overall, I enjoyed it.
A fellow Gemini, I may add, with my
Yep.
birthday was only a couple of weeks ago.
hmm
And beneath me, we have another person from north of the border from where I am. He is full of wrestling knowledge and he supports Kilmarnock. Shredder lives on. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. I'm a bit gutted that Lionel Messi is heading to Inter Miami. He's not going to be joining us at Rugby Park this season.
Oh,
Yeah, but massive shame on that. But no, I really enjoyed this episode. I'm glad to be here talking about it. I've heard a lot previously about Magnum TA's car wreck. It was an interesting episode, getting a full in-depth perspective of it.
Okay, so I knew very little. I mean, one of the things that I like about Dark Side of the Ring is that it informs me on stuff that I know nothing about. There's times when we are following people that I know a little bit about, or significantly about, whether it be someone like Dino Bravo or Chris Benoit or people like that. But Magnum TA, I knew nothing about, and who would have thought that back in the '80s, you could be a fucking sex god if you had a big fucking fat tash and a mullet. That's what fucking represented masculinity back then, and definitely Magnum TA Terry Allen was was a big representation of that. It was also really good to watch an episode of Dark Side of the Ring where the person being portrayed is still alive,
hmm
because so often so often, unfortunately, I say that very tongue in cheek, um the people we talk about have passed away, and then we have to hear accounts from the people who knew them. So it was good to hear from the horse's mouth himself, from Terry Allen. And this was a lot different than what I expected, because usually I thought it would be like another story of a guy who fell off the rails and got drunk and got high, but it wasn't that case at all. It more like the reminiscence of Brian Pillman a little bit. Yeah, a similar thing
yeah.
to a degree, of a guy who was about to maybe change his fortunes, and then a fucking car accident changes everything for them, and they never truly recover from that. Obviously, what happened to Magnum was terrible, and he was never able to wrestle again. But it was a great story about his early career, as well as the what happened with the accident and all the people he intermingled with, and how he got his name. And obviously, I mean, I jokingly called him Magnum PI and Tom Selleck and stuff like
And
that,
that's how he got
but
the
it
name.
totally made
That's how he got
sense.
the
It
name.
totally
Yeah.
made
So,
sense.
yep.
That's
hmm
how he got the name. So Jose, just to ask you how you felt about this episode, and what did you learn from it?
I really enjoyed it, and I thought, it was like they were talking about like how Hogan was the guy in the WWF, and
Hmm.
Magnum. Man, it was one of those things where it's one of those what ifs. Like, what if he got his moment? Because, like Jake Roberts said, jumping ahead, he was about to get that world title. He was about to be the guy, and it's a shame that he never got that. And it makes me sad for him because he's one of those like guys that had it all. He had the look, could talk on the mic, could have great matches with anybody, but unfortunately, the car wreck is what ruined it. And, he was never the same after that, which is very unfortunate. But I learned a lot about Magnum TA because Magnum TA was before my time. So, and I always like learning about guys like that, people that came before us.
Yeah, a very tragic tale for sure. Trevor, you got anything to add?
Yeah, again, this was quite historically significant because, as you mentioned, Magnum TA was going to be the guy for the
hmm
NWA. And I mean, so much so that after his car wreck, it derailed a lot of the plans that Dusty had built for
hmm
what was going to happen with the NWA. Magnum TA was supposed to get the world title. He was supposed to I believe the plan was initially the first feud he was going to have with the belt was going to be against Nikita Koloff.
Yeah.
Because Koloff and him had that best of 7 series. Koloff had gotten the better of him. And then afterwards, that was when they were going to move on to the rematch with Ric Flair. But if you look at what happened afterwards, after Magnum was handicapped, he was no longer able to go into the ring. Nikita Koloff faced Flair for the belt. And of course, next year at the Arcade, what was supposed to be the Magnum TA Ric Flair rematch, they elevated Ron Garvin. And the NWA's business, Jim Crockett Promotions business, was down.
Yeah.
It played a big part in the eventual bankruptcy.
Yeah, you could argue that Magnum TA's car accident was the domino effect, I think. I mean, it had that much of a significant impact on the eventual demise of NWA and eventual sale to Ted Turner. You know, it really hurt them in the long run because Magnum was going to be that guy. He was going to be the Hulk Hogan of the NWA, no wrestlers allowed. But yeah, it's just unfortunate.
It was certainly a big part of it. I mean, the Jim Crockett bankruptcy could be a Dark Side episode in its own right because
It could.
There was so much going on with that. But Magnum TA, and the car wreck that took him out of the picture, unfortunately, because they had built him as the number one babyface in the company, there was nobody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what actually surprised me because you look at all types of eras in wrestling about how certain wrestlers never got their shot, and people could have been elevated to a degree. It kind of surprises me that to a degree that there really wasn't anybody else, on that roster, who could have even had a chance of like maybe pushing their head above water. It boggles my mind. Obviously, I wasn't around watching it during that. I mean, I was around, but I wasn't really watching it during that period. So yeah, it does shock me that there was no successor remotely, and it ended up having to resort to a heel,
Mm-hmm.
a Russian heel. As somebody
He wasn't even Russian.
Who wasn't even Russian. Yeah. Oh, your best friend's here, Shredder. Oh, hello, Phony Beatlemania. Hello.
Oh yeah.
Magnum was a great wrestler. Just sorry about his bad luck indeed.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Magnum was a good wrestler. I think it was more of a case of he was very, very good in the ring, but he wasn't, I would say, up there in terms of being like one of the best workers in the business.
Yeah.
When they brought him in initially to Jim Crockett Promotions in the NWA, he was beating people in under a minute with a belly to belly suplex, and they were putting him.
Goldberg's. You look at Goldberg.
Yeah, but again, they were smashing him over people, and then he was starting to work with the likes of Tully Blanchard. So Tully was able to, slow him down and start teaching him stuff in the ring.
Yeah.
And he was basically getting groomed for eventually facing off against Ric Flair.
Have they done a Dark Side, speaking of his training on Buzz Sawyer yet? Because I don't know if they've touched on that, but that would be an interesting episode.
What, you mean Magnum TA with Buzz Sawyer?
Yeah, because Buzz Sawyer.
It was in this episode. Buzz Sawyer ripped. They mentioned Buzz Sawyer ripped him off for $10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was gonna.
That's how much it cost for a wrestling license. When a wrestling license, as Jim Cornette pointed out,
it was like $15-$25,
$10 to $25, depending on what state you're in.
Yeah,
they're only required for the states that still regulate wrestling as a professional sport.
Yeah. Because I know the famous Buzz Sawyer story is that he got the Undertaker. He conned the Undertaker, and I've heard that one, and I'm like, okay, so I learned something new. I'm like, Buzz Sawyer was a con man, and he was an asshole.
Yeah, and Magnum showed up at Buzz Sawyer's door
apartment. Yeah, like, hey,
and he got about 2 hours worth of training.
Yeah, $5,000 an hour.
Yep.
He's next thing you know, he's become a professional wrestler. I mean, he obviously elevated himself. He kind of like the sort of the thing I got off him was a bit like someone like Batista, like somebody who comes into the business and just gets skyrocketed to the fucking moon. Just right time, right place, right time. Got a good look about him. Over with the fans, because we all remember during certain periods when Evolution were all heels. For some reason, every time Batista's face got shown, the fans would cheer for him. You know, it was just, and this is before he became like a proper solo act. I think it was all when they had that one fake feud between him and Triple H, when Triple H said that you do lose too much and all of that. Anyway,
Yeah, it was like
I'm going,
right around like 2004 when the seed was planted and they started to do that shit. Because I remember when that happened.
Yep.
But just to get back to Terry Allen here,
Yep.
you know, like it just things seem to just work for him. Him obviously being spotted by other wrestlers, having a look about him that would make him ideal for the wrestling business. It is ironic that the two top guys for either company were both called Terry.
Yep.
Funnily enough,
Terry Bollea, Terry Allen, yeah.
Yeah, and they're both with handlebar mustaches and fucking long flowing blonde hair.
Terry the Hulk Mulder, brother.
Yeah, so yeah, but nevertheless, they had their Hulk Hogan, but he came across more of a like a working man and stuff like that.
Yep.
And that biker gimmick was good, which was basically they wanted to try and make him like Tom Selleck, but on the motorcycle and all of that, you know. Yeah, just seeing his career pan out the way it did, I would have loved to have watched it during that particular era.
Yeah.
And
such a
just
short
knowing that there was
career, eight years before just 8 years in his career and 2 years at Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yeah, and I would just to see an alternative to the WWE back then as well, because Chris Jericho, who was commentating this, was right. Like they under Vince McMahon, he really cartoonified wrestling, and obviously with cartoons, with larger than life characters like Hulk Hogan, making them superheroes and stuff like that, whilst there was something a bit more grounded with Jim Crockett's promotions.
Mm-hmm.
With the characters and all of that, and outside of the WWE, that groundedness is very much appreciated because they do go for the flamboyance. WWE, maybe not necessarily in the ring, but outside the ring, they're flamboyant as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to get you over with characters more than wrestling ability and stuff like that. But yeah, it was interesting to see Terry Allen's path to superstardom. I never really felt like he got his revenge truly back on what's his face who took his money. I mean, I was hoping he would have beaten the shit out of him instead of just getting 2 hours of fucking wrestling. Yeah. So
but that kind of shit used to happen all the time back in the day. I mean, Big Boss Man was trained by Ted Allen. And when you say trained, I mean, Ted Allen basically took his money and told him where he could get a pair of wrestling boots.
Yep. Like, here, give me $1,000, and then, okay, you just go down the street and get some boots or some shit like that.
Well, I thought it was that, but also like the fact that WWE got a lot of their talent to the point where they were having
to get ECW guys.
I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, if I'm honest. But
NWA was a great reason why when it came back, it was repackaged into WCW basically, but it kind of lived on until then. Like Ted Turner was the last hurrah for the old NWA. I think Nick Aldis leaving was the kiss of death. Who the hell is Nick Aldis?
For current NWA is what he's talking about.
Yeah,
but everybody forgets, right? The NWA back in the day, right? If you watch Magnum TA's work on their television show back in the day, when he's giving his interviews, he's cutting promos with the likes of Nikita Koloff and Ric Flair. Now, Magnum, he just looked straight through the camera. He exuded star power.
Yep.
And that looked great on television. But what everybody forgets is the TV show wasn't the main draw of the NWA. The NWA's TV show was effectively an infomercial. It was to get people to come out to the live events.
Yep.
But when Magnum TA is not there, they're not showing up.
Yeah, it was the ultimate draw.
Yeah, you got to have your biggest star in the bigger markets and whatnot. And if you don't have them, people ain't coming.
Dusty was making him his movie star.
Yep.
So one of the things that I found quite amusing was the fact that he finds this lady, they fall in love, they decide to get married, but then Dusty brings out the plan for what he has for Magnum, and it's okay. We're gonna make you into a sex symbol.
Yeah.
And people are gonna fall in love with you and stuff like that. And you got all these fucking fans. God knows how many fucking groupies he must have shagged during his prime. But the thing that made me laugh my ass off was the fact that Magnum's first wife mentioned how they went shopping in the mall, and this one groupie girl saw him
And she
and
fainted.
and she fainted. I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? That's the most bizarre thing I've ever
Yeah, but I
bloody
mean,
heard.
David Crockett even said, when he came to the office to talk to him,
Yeah,
all the girls in the office were swooning over him.
Yeah, because he just had that look, like he oozed that natural charisma, and he
Yeah.
just had that badass look, and
He
it
just
was like all the girls want to be with you, and all the guys are jealous of you. He had that kind of look.
You show a picture of Magnum TA now to women, they'll be thinking like, what the fuck? But back then, holy shit, he exuded sex appeal.
yeah.
Yep.
Mullet, hairy chest, mullet, and fucking mustache. That was what it's all about. I also noticed as well when I watched that era of wrestling outside the WWE though, they had this very straight talking, like the faces. They looked in the camera, as you said, and they were very straight talking to the point. Like I had a very determined sort of characteristic about them. They weren't like trying to portray a gimmick, so to speak, which is something I do miss about old school. I do miss in modern day wrestling, but everyone is being very exuberant nowadays. But you watch classic wrestling now, and the classic wrestling promos is just put the mic in my face and I'll cut something, and I'll sound very determined when I say it. And I think that's what we got from Terry as well when he was doing it, and he was very good at doing it as well.
You had to
So
convince
should we?
people you believed what
Yeah.
you were saying.
Yep. Back then, you were your gimmick too. Like there was no breaking kayfabe. Like good guys had to go with good guys, bad guys had to go with bad guys, and it's a era that is missed, and it's what they miss today. But the business done been overexposed to the point where we'll never get that
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible.
This was pre. Was this pre Eddie Mansfield? I don't. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Was Eddie Mansfield 88 or 85 when he exposed the business?
Oh, I don't know. I can look it up.
Okay.
Did you guys you ever watch Young Rock Shredder?
No, I can't say I have.
I do recommend it because
It's a good show.
It's a good regarding the historical things. I think obviously it's been exaggerated, and there are times where you feel Dwayne Johnson just putting a comedy element on every aspect of it. But little things from Young Rock kind of reminded me from I got vibes of Young Rock from certain things that happened in this episode, because in Young Rock, the heels and the faces, even though in real life they were good friends and they chilled with each other, in hotel rooms and playing cards and stuff like that. But in public, they had to be kept apart. And there was like moments where Harvey Wimbledon would be having maybe a drink with young Dwayne Johnson. And then obviously Rocky Johnson would come in, and Rocky Johnson can't be seen with Harvey Wimbledon because one's a face and one's a heel. And so Harvey Wimbledon has to fuck off, he, and stuff like that. And to a degree, it was a little bit like that, obviously, in this episode as well, where because they were still keeping kayfabe, people like Ric Flair weren't allowed to see Terry Allen when he was in hospital. He had to be snuck in through the back and stuff like that, which is
what they
remarkable.
didn't mention as well in this when they were bringing that up, the fact that Flair, JJ Dillon, Blanchard, and Anderson all got snuck up to go and see Magnum while he was lying in the hospital. The cop who let them in was none other than Doug Dillinger, former head of WCW security.
No, it all full circle. I like the fact that it was Andre the Giant who gave him his nickname, which was pretty cool, and it kind of shows you like where regarding territories and where certain wrestlers were back then, jumping between different companies. And Andre the Giant fully wasn't with the WWE back then until he was. It was nice to know that he had the part to play.
This
the
would
accident.
be this would be a couple of years into Magnum's career when he was still just calling himself Terry Allen. But at the time, I believe Vince Senior was still in charge of the WWF. At which point he was working as Andre's booking agent.
Yeah,
So
because
he was
Vince, I don't.
Senior.
Vince Jr. Vince Jr. didn't take over till like 82 though, didn't he? 82, 83?
Something like that. But Vince Senior used to book Andre out to different territories.
Yeah.
And even sometimes it would be a couple of, he would also use Andre in some ways to get leverage if he wanted somebody in a territory. So if he calls up Bill Watts and says, "Look, I want so and so. Can you make him available for me?" And Watts, says, "Yeah, I'll make him available. Thank you, Bill. Here's another couple weeks of dates on Andre for you."
Yep. Because Andre was that definition of the special attraction back then.
Oh yeah,
damn right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
When he was used, and particularly when he was used well. When he wasn't, I mean, the Sheik, not the Iron Sheik, but the original Sheik, he was a perfect example of how not to book Andre the Giant.
Yep.
Because the Sheik had been undefeated in Detroit for, I think, about 3 years. And finally, they bring Andre the Giant into the territory. They think, okay, Andre's finally going to beat the Sheik. And Sheik throws a fireball at him. Andre gets counted out, and it kills the territory.
Actually, before we move on with talking more about this episode, I think we need to. I wanted to do this at the beginning of this episode, but it just slipped my mind.
Take a minute
to Iron Sheik, who passed away just a couple of days ago at the age of 81. A very flam. Was it announced yesterday?
Just
yesterday.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. So yeah, he passed away yesterday. Then, a very flamboyant character. Pretty much became a character of himself in his latter years. That definitely one of Hulk Hogan's greatest rivals. He was. He was.
I was watching. There's a clip floating around on social media where Andre and Iron Sheik and Hogan are cussing each other out on Howard Stern, and they're just like talking all kind of shit. And at the very end of it, he's like, "I love you, brother," and then he's like, "I love you too." And I'm like, that's why I love Sheik, because Sheik was one of the only people that could like talk shit to people, and then he'd tell them he'd love them as soon as the conversation's over. And it's like Iron Sheik was such a character in retirement, and he was more over when he was retired than he was actually wrestling. Just because of all the crazy shit that he would say.
He's also in Young Rock, by the way, as well. If you watch Young Rock, there's a lot of Iron Sheik in there. He was part of that clique, so to speak.
Freddie, Rock's paid tribute to him. Actually, he said he actually called him Uncle Sheiky. Sheik's wife used to babysit him.
Yep.
But what I was going to ask is, the stories about the Iron Sheik are fucking legendary. Do you guys have a particular favorite?
Oh God, let's see.
I'm sorry, I'm not very knowledgeable on his stories. I'm afraid. Maybe I do know one, but I need a refresher from one of you guys to remind me of it.
God, I'm trying to think of like stories you could tell about Iron Sheik. It's like I'm mostly. Go ahead.
Well, I can think of a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
Look, I've been watching some of that A&E stuff where they find the treasures for the Iron Sheik, and one of the things was these sort of clubs,
the Persian clubs,
the Persian clubs and stuff like that, and that looked quite like a feat of strength in its own right, and you can make you understand why Sheiki had his amazingly strongman physique that he did, because to wield those clubs the way he had to was kind of remarkable. Bob Backlund, I believe, owns them now.
Yep.
As well. And that's also nice to see as well. He was like a Hulk Hogan of his period to a degree regarding being an American hero and all of that. Obviously not brother.
He was not anywhere near as fucking flamboyant as Hogan was.
No. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying regarding being that sort of American hero type character. But in the
I've got my story, but go ahead.
I'm
pretty much done. Let's get your story.
Okay, mine's pretty fucking it's common knowledge. It's like it's the funniest fucking joke in the history of the business. The WrestleMania 17 gimmick battle royal. The fact that fucking like Bobby Heenan is on commentary and he openly says, like, by the time the Sheik makes it to the ring, it'll be WrestleMania 38. And what's funny is people are like, why the fuck did Iron Sheik win that thing? It was because he couldn't take a fucking bump. And that was why he won the damn thing. And I'm like, that's why Sheik's just a legend, man. It was like, dude was in his 60s when that match happened. Or let's see. Yeah, it was like, he was getting close to 60 at that time, and just the fact that nope, he could not take one fucking bump, and that's why he won the gimmick battle royal. And I was just like, man, Sheik is a legend, man.
Yeah. I always liked his boots, by the way, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Shred.
Okay, well, there's a couple of I can actually think of.
Yep.
Let's see. There was his run in WCW. That proved basically how bad their management was at that point, all throughout really the history of the company. Iron Sheik went to WCW, I want to say 88, 89.
Yeah, he was gone. He was out of WWF by then.
Oh, yeah, he was out of the WWF, but he couldn't work that style anymore. The fact is, his body had broken down, he was injury prone, he was pretty much immobile at that point. So they bring him in, they've got him on a $100,000 a year deal, which is a lot of fucking money back then.
At the time, yeah.
So they've got him on this deal. They bring him in. He's absolutely rotten in the ring. Management then decides, we'll job him out. We'll make him so mad he'll just go home. Sheik was just happy to get the money.
Yeah.
So he was fine doing jobs. The problem was he was so fucking rotten in the ring still doing the jobs. They couldn't justify keep putting him on the cards. So they literally sent him home to sit out the rest of the contract. The problem is they forgot to send him his fucking notice. So he wound up rolling over for another year for $100,000.
So he basically became the Milton Ladams of WCW, where it was like, yeah, we tried to fire him, but nobody told us about it. Dubbies.
Awesome.
I don't know what's
over. You got an extra $100,000. That's hysterically funny.
I don't know what's funnier, that or the fact that the Kevin Nash Scott Hall story when they did the deal memo thing and JR, like, those are the two funniest stories of mismanagement I ever heard in my entire life. Because I'm like, you paid these two guys to show up, you give them favored nations and deal memos and shit, and then when JR's like, oh yeah, I'm bringing like Diesel and Razor back to the WWF, and then they're sitting there, they're watching Raw, it's been pre-taped, Hall and Nash are in the back, and then out comes like Rick Bogner and Glenn Jacobs, and they looked at him and they're like, we just gave these two motherfuckers $500,000. And I'm like, man, oh, Lord.
Just a couple comments from Bossman here.
Some of my other favorite stories were regarding the Sheik. Let's see, there was this failed drug test where he didn't understand what it meant when he tested positive. If I remember the story correctly, I think it was Pat Patterson and Jack Lanza who had to go to the back and explain to him, says, Sheik,
this is how it works.
And he said, oh yes, Sheik clean, Sheik no do the gimmick no more. So Sheik, you tested positive. Yes, Sheik very positive, Sheik positive, he no do gimmick no more. No, Sheik, you were positive for cocaine. Yes, Sheik very positive. Sheik not do cocaine anymore. He positive. No, Sheik.
Oh,
it meant there was cocaine in your system.
Yeah.
It means we've got to suspend you. And
you can fuck.
Then immediately says, "Motherfucker! I know I shouldn't have let Randy Savage do the test for me."
And then if you like go outside of like WWF and WCW, if you YouTube any Iron Sheik shoot interview, you are going to piss your pants laughing. Like he just goes off on anything, and it's just like you don't even follow it, and you just know you're going to laugh your ass off.
There's also a documentary about the Iron Sheik that was done in 2014. That is up on YouTube. I watched that this morning, and I highly recommend that to anybody. Go and watch it if you were a fan of the Iron Sheik. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story as well when he cussed out the Kentucky State Athletic Commissioner on a live microphone.
See, that's why we hardly saw him in the PG era, or in any era, after he retired, really, because the guy was when it came to being on the mic, obviously he was a hazard. So
Well, here's the
never
thing:
know.
it was inadvertent with him cussing out the state athletic commissioner.
Yep.
I mean, because Jim Cornette, when he was still a ringside photographer, was filling in as the ring announcer for Christine Jarrett, and they had a really strict athletic commissioner. He was insisting that all the rules be followed. The way I've heard him described, he apparently had a resemblance to Elmer Fudd.
Oh God!
And Christine Jarrett has told Jim, who's filling in as the ring announcer for the night, and says, "Now, make sure you don't let any of the boys grab that microphone, you hear?" And he says, "Absolutely." He says, "No, especially Sheik. I mean, you know what he's like." And Sheik's gimmick was, he would take the microphone, he would say to the crowd, "Don't say USA." And, he'd cut a promo in Urdu and then say, "Run number one, USA, Haktui."
Free.
But he would do that. So Cornette's announced him down to the ring. He's marching straight towards Jim. And Jim's trying to say, "No, the commissioner.
Yeah.
Give me the microphone." He's fighting with Jim Cornette for the microphone. He says, "Not the commissioner." And it finally gets to the point Sheik literally hooks his arm. So Cornette can't move. And the microphone is right there in front of Sheik. And he just goes, "Fuck the commissioner."
No, beautiful.
Yeah, I think my favorite one. Here's like the weirdest fucking pairing for a shoot interview ever, and I know Shredder's probably seen this. The Honky Tonk Man, the Iron Sheik, and New Jack. That right there is top tier comedy. Like the three people that you'd never expect to see together in the room at the same time.
God. I don't know if you ever saw an interview that New Jack did with kayfabe commentary shortly afterwards, but Sean Oliver, Sheik was trying to get drugs during that interview. All of them were trying to get drugs during that interview.
Yep.
But Sean Oliver revealed that they had that room the Honky Tonk Man, New Jack, and Iron Sheik were kicked out of. And when they moved the couch to set up for filming, they found a crack can. New Jack was saying it he was asking, seriously? Because we had been looking for one. If that had been ours, that tape would have been much fucking shorter than it was.
Yep. Because they sat there for like 3 hours, and then they all go on this fucking rant about Chris Benoit because it was around that time that crazy shit had happened,
but it caused so much noise and commotion, they got kicked out of the hotel.
Yep. It was like the unlikeliest pairing. It's like you'd never picture the three of them together. You could probably picture Iron Sheik and Honky Tonk Man, but then when you throw New Jack in the mix, you're like, shit's gonna get weird, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a bizarre trio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's just get back to anyway. Rest in peace,
Magnum.
Iron Sheik.
Yeah, rest in peace, Sheik, baby.
Just some comments here from Bossman. He says, my favorite Sheik story. Oh, where is it? My favorite Sheik story was that he was a friend with Ali, a person that tried to crawl up on Sheik, suplexed that TMFR.
Mm-hmm.
How truthful? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either, mate. But yeah, that's what you heard. That's what you heard from the Sheik.
He was legitimately a fucking bodyguard for the Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
I mean, look at him, man. He's so fucking swole. Totally understandable. But yeah, that camel clutch, what a fucking devastating move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was Colonel Mustafa, wasn't he?
Yeah, well. Colonel Mustafa.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because the stories of him being able to break people's legs. I mean, geez, there's obviously the story. Now, it's not come from Hogan. It's come from Sheik. He's the one that's told it, but he was offered $100,000 the night he was supposed to drop the WWF title to Hulk
to break Hogan's legs, right? Because I remember hearing that one too. Yeah.
Vern Gagne offered him $100,000 to break Hogan's leg. Told him he would give him a job in the AWA, bring the WWF title with you. And Sheik told Vince McMahon, said, "No, I'm a man of my word. I'll drop the title to Hogan. I'll do business."
Yep.
But when fast forward when Warrior was holding up the WWF for money because he wouldn't do the he wanted more money to go out to the ring for the 2-on-3 handicap match.
I remember that at SummerSlam.
Yeah, 91.
Slaughter said that Hogan was even saying, break his leg. Sheik, break his leg.
Makes you wonder.
About Warrior. To break Warrior's leg.
Yeah, Hogan was telling Sheik to break Warrior's leg.
The irony in that, considering Sheik would have almost done it like 7 years earlier.
Interesting. Yeah. Anyway, back to Magnum TA. So I think it's about time we talked about the life changing event, because he was on a crest of a wave right now. He was one of the top dogs. Yeah, he had a fantastic best of 7 match with Nikita Koloff, and he was now ready to challenge for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and it all deemed that it was going to go his way. And then he buys himself a Porsche, and then that very same day, while he's driving it, he crashes it. And that crash.
It wasn't the same day. I mean, he bought the Porsche for a while, a few weeks.
They made it seem like it was the same day.
Yeah, but it was a few weeks later that after he got it. Yeah,
it was a little later that it happened. This was actually the only scene in the episode I didn't particularly like. What I mean is the driving scene when they're showing the car swerving the outside of it. It's quite fucking clearly a toy car that they're showing.
Mm-hmm.
They've cheaped out the production of that. I get that they can't show that, but I mean, if they want to do gritty interior shots like they did the other shots, of Magnum sitting inside the car with the rain, I'm happy enough with that. But don't crap out and do those kind of shots for like a toy car.
He wasn't drinking or totally sober. He was obviously maybe speeding a little bit, but he is in a Porsche, and usually if you are in a supercar, you tend to see what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
It was a dark night. It was raining and all of that, so he had some hindrances. But unfortunately, hitting that telephone pole
split the damn thing in half.
Yeah,
split the thing in half. Almost split himself in half. But he never fully recovered.
The car hydroplaned, so he hit a huge puddle of water on the road.
Yep.
And it basically meant that the tires in his car were no longer connecting to the asphalt. So he had no grip when this happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for him, with that particular crash, he did survive, but his body never recovered in the right way, which meant that he could never wrestle again. Now, this did throw up a lot of plans. Yeah, I mean, let alone live. I mean, they're just trying to keep him alive at first. And luckily, no amputations or anything, but that could have easily have happened too. By the way,
yeah.
As somebody who's my uncle got hit by a car a few years ago, and he lost both his legs, and initially before the amputations even happened, they were just trying to keep him alive. He was 82 years old when this happened.
Damn.
He's now 85. Yeah, like to rehabilitate your life at 82, let alone survive from it, I mean, I give him a lot of credit because he's a changed man. Obviously, he looks so small now without his legs. But anyway, nevertheless, going back to Magnum, I think being obviously a physically strong man does have its benefits in this particular case because it saved him. I think. Most people body would have been crushed to pieces. Mm-hmm. Being just a bit stronger, being a bit thicker, possibly helped. But nevertheless, I think he's lost the ability in his right arm now, hasn't he? He's quadriplegic.
He's classed as quadriplegic. I can't remember if he's completely lost the ability in his right arm.
Yeah, I know. I think they said
he's able to stand, which they told him he would never do. He's able to walk short distances, which again they told him he would never do.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's not in this episode, but JJ Dillon has spoken about elsewhere. When the Horsemen got snuck up to the hospital, none of them said a word when they were there with Magnum just lying there, because they were a lot of them all of them just realized that could have been any single one of them.
Yeah, because they were so broken up about it.
They all had fast cars. They all drove like that. That could have been any single one of them.
Yeah, Ric Flair, my God. I mean, like he could have easily been on the dustbin a heap of history a long time ago with the lifestyle he fucking lived. You know what I mean? So it's amazing that he basically fulfilled his wrestling career. Um, but he was like a wheeling dealing son of a gun, wasn't he? So, but unfortunately for Magnum TA, he never really got to see the fruits of his labors. And before he had the chance to really be a top tier guy, it got cut short. And as you said earlier, Jose, this led to the domino effect
Mm-hmm.
within Jim Crockett Productions, and they weren't able to recover from that. You know, bringing in Nikita Koloff as a face didn't work. Um, People like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, they were top tier guys, but they needed that fresh young blood, which Magnum offered. But unfortunately, there was nobody else in the pipeline who could even come close to taking his spot. And as Jim Cornette said, not only take his spot, but be different as well, not a copycat.
Yeah, they wanted somebody that could be like him, but they wanted somebody that could fill that role, but not be necessarily like Magnum. Like, be that next big guy, but not necessarily be Magnum. And another thing we forgot to mention was Magnum's plan was to get out like in his 30s. He even said that too. He was like, I'm over here long enough to stay here for a few years, and then I'm getting out, because I think he wanted to get out around like 34, 35, like somewhere in his 30s.
He said he didn't want to be wrestling in his underwear at 37.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was planning to go into NASCAR, so that was probably one of the reasons, he was driving as fast and as recklessly as he did.
Bloody hell, the irony right there. Yeah, to go wanting to go into NASCAR, but his wife stayed with him regardless of the fact that he was in infidelity prior to his accident, with loads of women throwing themselves at him. But he was still being he still had infidelity post his accident as well. He was cheating on his wife, which is incredible. I mean, which is
well, you got to consider back in the 80s, it was like that for a lot of people. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, if you go look at like Bret Hart, he's like one of the nicest guys in the world, and he even admitted, he was like, "Yeah, I was not the perfect husband. I had girls."
I wouldn't say Bret Hart is one of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, he comes across as a miserable sod, but he has a bit of like ring honor about him, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But
like as respected as he is, it's like Bret was no saint either.
Ric Flair survived 2 plane crashes.
Yep.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, he broke his back in one of them.
Yep, broke his back, told he was never going to wrestle again, and then I think he came back like 6 months later or something.
Yep. But as for Magnum TA, when he was admitted to the hospital, they had to shut down the switchboard and set up a completely separate phone line because they were fielding so many calls a day.
Yep.
They got flooded with letters. They got there were vigils. There were flowers. Magnum was extremely popular with wrestling fans.
Yep, and that was back then too. That was back then too, when wrestling was considered real, at least down south.
Yeah, and he made front page news and as well as television news for a little while, and he eventually recovered. But what didn't recover was it was Jim Cornette Productions, and they never recovered after that. Even though they tried to find alternative people to take his place, they weren't him. And as you said, the domino effect happened, and WWE was getting stronger. They had their WrestleManias. They had their Hulk Hogan, who was Hulk Hogan, who was becoming really popular. They had decent undercard wrestlers too at that particular point. You had people like Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage, Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Obviously he had his own incident afterwards, but at that particular time he didn't.
Yeah, I definitely would not put Brutus Beefcake in the same category as Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage.
No, but look, Hulk Hogan's not known
the NWA had a really solid undercard too. I mean, you look at who was on there. You had the Road Warriors, you had the Midnight Express, you had the Rock and Roll Express, you had
Yeah, but they're all tag team wrestlers you're talking
no,
about right now.
but I'm also talking about you had Ric Flair, you had the Andersons, you had Tully Blanchard,
You had Sting, you had a ton of guys. Yeah.
They had a lot of guys, but they had
I'm-
no megastar, and that was what Magnum TA was being set up as.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying. Look, I'm not saying when I say Brutus the Barbecue Beefcake, I'm not saying that
you're just naming names.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing some names about because let's be honest, when it came to the WWE, on a handful of occasions they shot guys to the fucking moon simply because of a gimmick or a look.
Yeah,
not necessarily. With their technical ability as wrestlers was nowhere near as good as some of the other guys who put them over in the first place. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's basically what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding that, yeah, he also had Jake the Snake Roberts as well, and Ted DiBiase, and they had some decent guys. Yeah, I'm sure Jim Crockett's Productions had decent guys too, but they just couldn't pull another rabbit out the fucking hat. And it's incredible, really. I think that's also a disservice to them as an organization that they just couldn't find somebody else. In my opinion.
Yep. And this is what can happen when you have just that like one guy. Like this is why you saw WWE like spread it out where they're like, okay, we have to have guys now. We can't have the guy. We have to have a core group of guys because somebody could get hurt at any time, and that's what happened.
I don't know. I think what it is that they have the guy who is also got a few guys, if you know what I mean. With people like John Cena, you still had Miz and Edge and Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio.
You have to have that. You have to have that solid core group of guys. You can't just rely on one. And that was what NWA was guilty of. Was they were like, "This is our guy. We're putting all our eggs in this basket for him." And it's like, yeah, that's one of the reasons why it didn't work.
Even right now, with Roman Reigns being at the very top, yeah, you still got people like Seth freaking Rollins, who is absolutely superb. And AJ Styles, and probably a couple of others who named. I mean, Damien Priest looks like he's shooting up the ranks as well. You still got Brock Lesnar there. Like they've got guys who back up the main guys.
Yep.
Whilst back then, it really just felt like the Hulk Hogan show.
Yep.
It really, truly did. Like, who's there? I mean, for a while, it was the John Cena show for a while, let's be honest, regardless of other guys around them. And to a degree now, it's become the Roman Reigns show.
Yep.
To a degree. But, so like they love like elevating one guy to the fucking moon, but having a decent supporting cast. In my opinion.
What maybe didn't help as well. Okay, yeah, maybe Nikita Koloff wasn't the right choice to step in after, obviously, Magnum TA's out of the picture. When they turned a babyface, he with the picture of the tear in his eye, saying "I weep for Magnum." But they didn't even pull the trigger on that. Well, I mean, when he finally faced Flair for the belt, it was a double DQ.
Yep.
Koloff didn't win the NWA title.
I just think personally, like they made a mistake in thinking that people could actively cheer for a Russian, even regardless of Flair being a heel and Koloff being the baby face. If they were patriotic, they would have probably have cheered Ric Flair regardless. And it was just such a stupid move, making him a face and relying on him. If they had the balls, they would have found somebody else.
I mean, it depends. I mean, it has worked before when they've had somebody who was a hated heel turn babyface.
A Russian during the Cold War era.
Maybe not Russian during the Cold War era, but again, who knows? But
I mean, it would be like asking her, like if wrestling was around during like maybe during like the Second World War, and you got a fucking German Nazi and they turn him face. Like, you think they're gonna fucking people are gonna support him? You know what I mean? Ivan von Heydrich. You know what I mean? Yeah, he used to be a Nazi, but now he's seen the light, and he supports the grand old USA. It'd be very difficult for people to support somebody like that. regardless of them seeing the light, and over a fellow American who
Yeah.
might,
It was just a bad experiment gone wrong, and it just failed on epic levels.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
It was interesting this episode, though, Darkseid, to actually hear from his ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Not only everything regarding the marriage, but also what she went through during that whole ordeal.
Yeah, because she put up with a lot of shit, and it's like, if I could give advice to wrestlers today, stay single for real. Stay single, make your money, take care of yourself, do what you do. When the time comes right, you find that somebody. But yeah, no, the wrestling business, it's a very shady business.
It's different now, though. Like, do wrestlers still have like groupies that they can fuck after a television show or whatever? I mean,
more than likely,
it's still like.
It's not.
Really?
It may not be what it used to be, but it's still there. It's just not as prevalent as it once was.
I just feel like with all the house shows and them all over the world, that maybe having a little drink afterwards and all of that. So I feel like that era is done. I really do. I really feel that certain areas of like them maybe getting wasted on weekends or whatever. I really feel that those areas are done. I think there's more teetotal guys now.
I think it's more about the video games now. Yeah, guys are going to play video games rather than go out and go drinking.
So
to an extent, yeah.
Maybe also depends on what your standards are. Let's I'll throw a name out there, Enzo Amore. He was hooking up with rats, while he was still in a relationship with Liv Morgan.
Oh yeah, yep. I remember hearing about that shit, and I remember the stripper came out and she was like, "Yeah, this dude's like a really loudmouth motherfucker. He claims he's a wrestler, that kind of shit." Because I remember hearing about that, like after Enzo got fired. And yeah, some wrestlers, frankly, never grow up either. Some of them never get over it. Some people are addicted to the partying aspect.
Yeah, Enzo Amore, he's become some sort of political speaker now, hasn't he?
Hell if I know. Has he? I don't know.
Yeah.
Last I heard he was working with MLW.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Oh, fuck those. But yeah, as I said, I think just going back to what I said earlier, I do. When you watch shows like Up, Down, Down, these guys do seem to be more in the straight and narrow. And there's so many gorgeous female wrestlers working in the industry. I'm surprised they're just not fucking each other. You know what I mean? Which I'm pretty sure is the case.
Yeah,
for a few of them. You know what I mean? Now, who needs to go looking for a groupie when they've got gorgeous, what's her face, giving me the eye, who I can like relieve my tension with.
Shit, John Cena did. John Cena's guilty of that, and he was the top guy. He and Batista were probably the only two guys to bang the entire roster at the time. Yeah, I know Cena did, and CM Punk did too.
Yeah, CM Punk made his way through quite a few of the women on the roster.
Yep.
Wow, who did John Cena bang?
Let's see.
And then Mickey James.
Mickey James is definite.
Everyone banged Kelly, so she doesn't count. Kelly doesn't count.
Nikki Bella.
Nikki Bella for sure.
Oh, yeah, she doesn't count either.
Let's see.
They're practically married.
Yeah, for Cena, it's not really well known, but like
banging.
Batista definitely did that. Batista was the king of that shit because Batista, he had everybody. Batista was that type of dude. Punk, he dated Maria. He dated Kelly. He dated Mickey James. I know Punk has made his way around too.
Beth Phoenix, Lita, Daphne, Tracy Brooks.
Yeah.
He's now with what's her face now, isn't he?
AJ Lee.
What's her name? AJ Lee, yeah. Which is remarkable because they did that storyline of her being infatuated with him, but they ended up getting married.
There's a little cartoon that somebody had done. I don't know if you've ever seen the old clip where a very, very young AJ Lee is attending a WrestleMania fan access.
As he's Lita.
Yep.
And so somebody had done like a little cartoon of it where AJ Lee had said to Lita, "I want to be just like you when I'm older." And then there's the next panel is her fucking Punk in bed. Her saying, "Call me Amy."
That's funny.
Damn.
Damn.
Yeah. Okay, so what did Terry Allen do to restore his life? Because obviously once he recovered as much as he could do, they tried to get him back in wrestling in other capacities, mainly as a color commentator, but that never really panned out that well. I mean, he was doing interviews backstage, but he looked really stupid in that fucking red bow tie. I mean, this is the guy who was. I mean, look, I have no problems to a degree with certain wrestlers ending up in commentary if they've paid their dues to a degree, like Jerry Lawler has,
Mm-hmm.
But he obviously hasn't paid his dues because there was more to come from Terry Allen, but it never got fulfilled. So him being in commentary felt a bit premature to a degree.
Yep.
Well, I don't mind if he's articulate enough to do it. Then I don't mind him having a crack at it.
Yeah.
It was weird that everybody on the roster was willing to take a small cut from their paycheck.
Yeah, to help him with medical bills and all that kind of stuff too, because they respected him that much.
With Jim Crockett matching whatever the boys made.
Yep.
Amazing camaraderie back then, to tell you the truth. Considering some of the ribbings and the hazing that wrestlers did to each other, and the way that he actually got elevated so quickly, whilst other people probably were still paying their dues, and there he is being the top guy. I'm surprised that they cared for him that much, but it kind of shows you how much of a pro he must have been, to get the respect of his peers like that, regardless of him being shot to the moon. So I want to know what.
But Magnum was doing color commentary. They also did try him briefly as a manager.
Yeah,
but again, the mobility.
He couldn't take the manager bumps.
No, he couldn't take the bumps. Obviously, he did that up until the acquisition of Jim Crockett Promotions by Turner. His contract was not picked up, and he didn't take a deal with him. He got a job in the real world outside. I'm trying to remember what it is he does for a living now, but he was able to get a career outside. Is it? No. I believe it's something to do with system analysis, isn't it?
I thought Vice really didn't really show much. It made it very vague in what the fuck he was doing, man.
He works as a manager at a network solutions company. So it sounds like he's got one of those type of jobs, like he's a networking kind of guy.
So he's okay, at least with his career. His now current wife is actually Tully Blanchard's ex-wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought to myself that name seemed a bit familiar. Yeah, she likes her Terrys, doesn't she? So is he in the Hall of Fame?
No.
No. He's not in the WWF. Well, he might. I think he's in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, but he's not in the WWF Hall of Fame.
No, he's not in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Do you have to be in the WWE to be in the WWE Hall of Fame?
No, because Abdullah the Butcher made it, and he never worked for him.
Neither did Great Muta.
Yep. Two of the guys to never work for, WWE.
And without doubt, then he needs to be in there, don't you think?
Jim Crockett's in there too, so
yeah. Goes to show, but he was like he didn't have much baggage. I mean, when it comes to womanizing and stuff like that, what wrestler doesn't really do that? You know, I mean, it's very difficult for a guy to
stay faithful
themselves.
Yeah,
stay faithful. Honestly, it really is.
Owen Hart is probably the one guy that you'll probably never hear that about.
Rick Rude.
Rick Rude's another one. Yeah. It's probably a handful of guys.
More than anybody is the most remarkable, considering the character that he played.
Yep.
He would have. So for
he was so devout, he would never even take his wedding ring off. He'd
tape it.
Colored wrist tape on.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is remarkable because I've always said about Rick Rude is that there is a guy who is nothing like his
character.
His character. But plays his character so convincingly that you would think that's an extension of his personality. You know what I mean? Which is what the best characters are in the WWE, in my opinion, just an extension of your personality.
Yep.
But yeah, credit to him.
Lance Storm's another one. I mean, Jim Cornette brought him and Chris Jericho into Smoky Mountain, thinking these guys are going to be pussy magnets. They figured that because they got a bigger guarantee than most of the guys did back in the day, because Cornette was going to get a bigger cut. Well, he was going to get a cut of their merchandise instead, and he thought, well, these guys are pussy magnets. They're going to sell merch, left and right with women. But the problem was, Jericho was picky, as he puts it, and Lance Storm was married and brought his wife with him to the shows.
Yeah, so that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, like, regardless of, like, oh, bollocks, that's me having to charge my car. I'm not working tomorrow, so I'm not too fussed about charging it. But anyway, like, picky and married, I mean, that shit should be irrelevant if just wrestling in front of a crowd. You know what I mean? Like, if you're let the girl scream for you regardless. You know what I mean? You can still act like a heartthrob in front of the women. On camera. I mean, it shouldn't really matter.
But this was a territory where the girls still wanted to fuck the wrestlers.
Yep.
The girls was the women in the audience were getting serviced by the likes of the Rock and Roll Express still, but they weren't getting anything from the Thrill Seekers.
Yeah, the Rock and Roll Express were like the Rolling Stones of wrestling.
Oh, fair enough. So, it was a nice. I mean, I don't want to say nice episode of Dark Side of the Ring, but it ended on.
It ended on a good note.
Happy. It ended on a good note. So,
it was nice that we got a complete story, and the guy is still around to tell his tale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm looking to see who we have next week. Okay.
Before we get on
Graham.
that. Oh God, with the guy on the radio and GB News.
No,
no, not that.
not the guy who thinks you can grow concrete.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
I guarantee in next week's episode they're going to make fun of the draw a dime segment, because I know that will be coming up. This guy could not draw a dime.
Oh, Mike Graham.
Hold on, guys. We'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah.
Let's mark this episode. I'll go first. 7 out of 10. Jose?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 7 out of 10. So it's a solid episode. Definitely worth a watch for the history.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this one did feel more like an education more than anything else. Regarding it, like a proper history lesson in regarding a particular wrestler and their ups and downs and rises and falls. So, as you said, next week will be about who?
It will be about the Graham family, Eddie and Mike Graham. And those two are before my time, so I know nothing other than the Mike Graham, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko couldn't draw a dime. I just saved our company $2.5 million because I fired the band of midgets. That's basically what I know Mike Graham for, is his famous shoot interview.
He's a promoter.
Yeah, he was a promoter, and he worked for WCW, and the famous story about him before we go is the one where he was giving Chris Benoit shit, and he told Chris Benoit that he could kill him if he absolutely could get away with it. That's what I remember most.
Mike Graham gave a few shoot interviews, which now are quite funny to watch, but back in the day, they were still funny back then, because it was like Mike Graham at some point has basically told everybody he would beat the fuck out of them at some point.
Yep.
Like, yeah, he told Vader he would beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, Mike Graham was like probably he was like 5'5", 5'6". He was a short motherfucker too.
Yeah, but he was supposedly telling all these tough motherfuckers, that he would beat the shit out of them.
Yep, and Chris Benoit was the one I remember most, because he was like, "If you ever stole my wife, I'd beat the fuck out of you." And Chris Benoit looked at him like, "Is this motherfucker for real? Like, is he crazy?" So I know they're probably going to be talking about that, about the whole Kevin Sullivan, Chris Benoit thing, and Mike Graham will somehow fit into that conversation.
Interesting. Once again, I look forward to it. Now, with every episode of Dark Side of the Ring, whether I know about these people, considerably, vaguely, or nothing at all, I'm always happy to get the history lesson, because I like the way they, show the shows, and there's always somebody who knows these guys reasonably well, who we all know. Jim Cornette seems to have his finger in every fucking pie when it comes to people involved in the business. So, yeah, roll on episode 3 next week, and we'll be back on Wednesday next week. to review it. We had something to do yesterday, which is why we did it today. But we'll be back Wednesday next week, every week, to review this particular series. Okay, so Jose, thank you very much for your return. Good to see you back, mate.
Great to see you.
The only thing I would add just before we go is if next week, if you're sensitive to subjects like suicide, maybe give next week's episode a miss.
Yeah, because if you cannot handle that for your mental state, no judgment here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you have watched the previous seasons of Dark Side of the Ring and you're on season 4, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah.
So we'll see all of you guys next week. Shredder, thank you very much again for being the encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge once again, mate. Hope to see you next week as well. And to anyone else out there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube. We are without doubt the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.